So this is a place of communal discovery, and I'm so happy each of you is here today. I would like to call, and I'm not going to give a lengthy kind of introduction. If you look up Dr. Dan Siegel, we would have to download something this thick. You know, you have to know that as an author and as a respected authority, particularly on parent-child attachment, there's no one in this country who is, I think, more respected. And this is a man who is not just in the world, which he could well be, of being a famous best-selling author and clinician and lecturer. He is someone who cares deeply, and really because of the person I met him through, Jessica Dibbs, he cares deeply, deeply about Baltimore and where we're going and people, and not just here. He's a favorite of the Dalai Lama, and I think you're going to understand why. So I'm going to call up Dr. Dan Siegel, our keynote this day. Thank you. You already have a lot of groupings, I know, here.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you. Wonderful. Can you hear me okay? Yes. Great. Well, thank you, Rebecca, and thank you for hosting this wonderful gathering of folks to talk about such an important topic as parenting. You want to sit there? Because then I'm going to constantly be turning there. Is it okay? Yes. Great. Well, otherwise it'll be, yes. So, and part of this issue of wanting to see Rebecca face-to-face is thinking about what happens in the face-to-face interactions we have with one another. And in thinking about parenting and the larger frame, what I'd like to do in, I guess I have 25 minutes, is that right? So I'm going to first take off my watch so I can watch this, is talk to you about a larger picture of where we as a human family might consider we are going versus where we should be going. And, I just came from a couple of large conferences which both had the same theme. They were all about the new path forward. And what I want to say about that is that we as a human species actually evolved as mammals, of course, to have attachment, which means that the young of mammals all need to turn to their attachment figures for them to survive and to thrive. And that's not true with other species of classes of vertebrates, for example. Fish don't necessarily need their parents. When lizards hatch out of their eggs, they don't need their parents. But we as mammals do. And then as primates, we got more complex in the social systems in which we lived. And then as humans, we did something very special that I think is rarely talked about, but needs to be named. And it's called alloparenting, A-L-L-O, parenting. And a wonderful primatologist and anthropologist named Sarah Hrdy, H-R-D-Y, writes in a book called Mothers and Others, the way that alloparenting, which means that we evolved, unlike almost all other primates and certainly most other mammals, we evolved actually to share child rearing. So we're mammals, yes. Babies need attachment figures. But unlike, for example, if you have a dog and the dog has puppies, that mother of those puppies does not share those puppies with anybody. Right? The mother cares for the babies, the puppies. With humans, it's totally different. We evolved for the last 2 million years with this system where we lived in community. And we had to look toward the others in community to see where their attention was, what was going on in their awareness, and what their intention was. And those three things, attention, awareness, and intention, would let us with our baby know, can I trust this member of the community to care for this very precious baby that I have? So then I give my baby to you because I think where your attention is, where your intention is, where your awareness is, will care for this baby. And I go out and I gather stuff for the community. and then you give me the baby back. We're all sharing our food. We were meant to be collaborative. And this process of looking to the face of the other human being allowed us, the second important scientific principles, first is alloparenting. The second is something you could call mind sight. You had to be able to see the mind of the other to know if you could trust them. And that mind sight ability probably preceded our ability to actually know our own minds. So we first knew the mental experience, the subjective experience of feelings, thoughts, intentions, awareness, attention, all that stuff is the mental life that we can see in the way a person is being. And that capacity to see the mind of self inside the body and, quote, other inside the person in the other body was a crucial aspect of community. So we have alloparenting, we have mind sight. And the next thing that happens is, as this baby is growing up, two big things happen in that attachment experience. One is the way that the caregiver's attuning to the internal state of the baby allows that baby, where's that baby? How old is that a he or she? How old is he? 1 year, great. So at 1 year, can I use his name? Milo, excellent. So Milo and his mom have a connection. Just take a look over there. This is great. This was not planned. So Milo and his mom have a connection. And what happens, and this is now principle number 3, so we have alloparenting, we have the idea of mind sight, is that there is a fundamental process that's rarely named, but if you look at anthropological views of attachment or look at neurobiological views of attachment, there's one process that happens right there. And look at Milo and his mom. The process is, are you okay with this? Oh my God, here's another one. How old's your baby? 2 months. This is like perfect. So well timed. And what's your baby's name? Sylvie? Sylvie and Milo, there's a future for you too. So what happens is, for a 2-month-old, Sylvie, the way a process called integration, which is where something, we'll name in a moment, is differentiated and then linked in the communication between Sylvie and her mom. By the time Sylvie is Milo's age, at 12 months, we have evidence to support the notion that if the communication between the two of them is integrative, and we'll talk about that in a moment, then Milo's brain will become integrated. And an integrated brain is the basis of a resilient life. So to put it very simply, integrated communication is where we share energy and information flow, where we honor differences and promote linkages. And if that happens for Sylvie at 2 months, by Milo's age at 12 months, he will have an integrated brain that's beginning to grow. So when I was in medical school, for example, my neuroscience teacher was David Hubel. And in 1981, when I was in school with him, he won the Nobel Prize for showing that the experiences you have shape the structure of your brain. So for me as a student, it was just a natural thing when I went through pediatrics, and I had this most amazing moment with my wonderful chief resident, Bob Hamilton, who's here, where I come upstairs and this guy greets me, goes, "Hi, I'm Bob Hamilton, and I want to exercise my memory, because I'm in my 60s now." So I go, "Okay, this is great, because this Bob Hamilton looks just like my chief resident, Bob Hamilton, from LA. So I said, "Oh, are you here in Baltimore?" He goes, "Are you the Dan Siegel from LA?" And he is my chief resident. He looks like Bob Hamilton because he is Bob Hamilton. Anyway, so pediatrics and then psychiatry and then all these other things. The issue became, could we take that finding of experience shapes the structure of the brain that Hubel won the Nobel Prize for, and show that look what's happening with Sylvie right now. Where did Milo go? There's Milo. These two are having experiences right now. What is an experience? An experience is the sharing and the flow of energy and information. That's the fundamental issue. energy and information flow is the basis of everything. Information is just energy in a formation that symbolizes something. So it's energy in formation, we call it information, but energy is everything. So right now, as Sylvie's mom is like this with her, she's learning a rhythmic way of anticipating how to be. Now, Milo at 12 months, unlike Sylvie at 2 months, look at Milo, he's looking all around the world. So in addition to this attunement that the parents are giving them, which is a form of integrative communication, which integrates the brain of the child, which, by the way, is the basis of all executive functions, focusing attention, regulating emotion and mood, regulating the way you comport yourself even in morality, having self-understanding. All these things are related to integrative functions in the brain. So integrative experiences where you're honored for how you're different, whether you're neurotypical or neuroatypical, whether you're male, female, black, white, all these things are just the wonderful differences we have. So not just tolerating differences, but honoring differences where the internal subjective experience that you have is seen through the mind-sight lens, in this case of the caregiver, but ultimately in classrooms and in companies and in communities. So what we have here is a beautiful example of how integrative experience is driving energy and information flow in the betweenness into the internal structure of the nervous system. Everyone following me so far? And then when you look at it this way, what's absolutely fascinating about it is the connectome study by Smith et al. In 2015 shows that the #1 predictor of every measure of well-being you can find is how integrated your brain is. And the way it's said in the study is how interconnected the connectome is. You don't need to worry about the terminology, but this is a big deal. Now, we zoom out from that. So we have alloparenting is important, and we look at culture, and alloparenting is not supported. Modern contemporary culture is not supporting us living in community. And you could very simply say we have a very, very sick society. That human beings were meant to live in community. And I can just speak for maybe Bob and myself in LA, so many people are living in isolation from family or people they trust. So this is a big deal that we've come up losing alloparenting. That's a big problem. Mindsight is not really encouraged. People are busy on their screens and not really looking at each other, which is right. I wanted you down here, Rebecca. So when you look at a person, your whole system, there's mirror neurons and all sorts of other systems, but whatever they are in the brain, we could talk about them, but they allow you to feel belonging. And your sense of wholeness is created in the betweenness. So Heather Berlin is going to talk soon, and we may have some fun conversations about this, but what I've been doing for the last 25 years or more is to say that the mind that's happening between Milo and his mom and Sylvie and her mom is both within the body and between the body and the world around that body. So what it means is something very different from what Hippocrates said 2,500 years ago, William James said in 1890, that's commonly said in the university setting, that mind is a synonym for brain activity. And so what I'm going to say now, this fourth scientific point, is extremely controversial, but I think it's really important just to name it. Mental life happens as much within us, within the body, the skin encased body, including its brain. So it's fully embodied, it's not just enskulled, and it's happening in community. And it's happening in our relationship, not just people, but the planet. Kids are too isolated from nature. Kids are too isolated from collaborative community. And so when we get this sick society that we live in and are disconnected from nature and from people, we get into a threat state. And a threat state, because of our evolution, probably over 50 million years of primate evolution, there's another one. Oh my gosh, this is like baby heaven. We get this moment where we realize when we're in a threat state that we activate this 50 million year old tendency we have for in-group, out-group distinction. And sadly, there are even studies of 14-month-olds who, you probably know this study, you find a 14-month-old who really likes granola and doesn't like Rice Krispies. No problem. That's all good. But then you show like a green puppet that likes granola and a red puppet that likes Rice Krispies. That's phase 2 of the study. Phase 3 is you have the child interact with the red puppet and the green puppet. Now, one puppet they're really nice to, the other puppet they're really mean to. Which is which? They're nice to the green puppet who likes the granola, right? Now, you could say, well, why is that the case? Because if it were resource allocation limitations, they would probably not be nice to the one that likes the cereal they like because they're going to take their cereal. No, it's because we have this sad situation as primates where we do this quick assessment. Are you like me or are you not like me? And if you're not similar to me, under a threat condition, I could kill you. Human beings have this incredible capacity for genocide. You saw that one of the sponsors of that wonderful video we just saw was Spielberg's Righteous Persons Foundation, right? I used to be the psychiatrist for the survivors of the Shoah Foundation, and we would interview 55,000 people about how there was a systematic attempt to destroy them because they were considered basically not like me as a Nazi. But this happens in Rwanda, it happens all over the world, Cambodia. This is just what human beings do. And so this moment in time is an incredible moment because if integration is honoring differences and promoting linkages, and if integration within your skull is the base of all these wonderful executive functions that give you resilience, if integration with your body is what gives you bodily health, if integration of relationship and attachment allows your child to develop really well, no matter what culture you're in, these are culture-neutral notions, and if communities that are integrative, where you honor differences across every kind of difference you can imagine, so that people have a sense of belonging. And you just look at, for example, the United States. Almost every shooter in a school had an experience of not belonging. There are males in their 20s who have a sense of not belonging. Our whole sense of well-being comes from belonging. We are social creatures. And it comes from an integrative kind of belonging. So you don't have to conform to be exactly like some prototype. You can be different and be accepted and belong. So the first thing is that the attunement that Sylvie and Milo are getting is going to let them become integrative. And now, as their moms, their dads, and the allo-parenting that goes around them, the other attachment figures help them feel secure inside of themselves. The second thing I said we were going to talk about is another fundamental thing that Peter Fonagy in London talks beautifully about, and it's called epistemic trust. So what's epistemic trust? You may remember that there's something called epistemology, which just means how something is known. How do we come to know something? So epistemic trust is basically, can Milo's parents, attachment figures, and Sylvie's attachment figures give them a sense that this is what the world is like, this is reality, and I can trust the validity of that reality, right? So I was teaching with Peter in London just recently for Child Mental Health Day for the UK, and we were there talking back and forth about this stuff, and it was absolutely exquisite how he's studying epistemic trust. And when there's a violation to epistemic trust in an attachment relationship, it totally messes up the mind and the development of the mind of the child. Think about what happens in, let's say, just for example, a country where there is a figure who stands up as a father figure or mother figure who's violating epistemic trust. And what it does to an entire system called a nation or a world where people are filled with a sense of threat because epistemic trust is violated. There's no sense of belonging, and people scatter into a primate-based in-group, out-group distinction, and then are feeling like they don't belong, and that the world can't really be a place of peace and connection. So part of what happens as we launch Sylvie and Milo out into the world is we adults who are sitting in these chairs have to realize that the world that they're going to go into is a world we have made. And a dear friend and colleague who passed away 10 years ago, John O'Donoghue, you'd say in Ireland, used to say, the duty of privilege is absolute integrity. And if we're going to have integrity then this conference about parenting, of course, is about the relationship of Sylvie and her mom and other caregivers. Of course, that's what it's about. And of course, it's about Milo as an older child and his relationship with his caregivers. Absolutely. But we all need to rethink what this question of parenting is. The subtitle may be, an art without a manual, but actually we know enough from scientific studies across all cultures on this planet. The field I work in, we use anthropology, sociology, linguistics, psychology, biology, chemistry, physics, and math. We combine them all into one process called interpersonal neurobiology, and we ask the question, is there a manual for parenting? And actually, we think there is. We actually think there is a manual, that there is a cross-cultural common ground for what we need to do. And it doesn't stop with the relationship of parents and their kids. It has to do with communities. It has to do with our sense of belonging. It has to do with us realizing we are responsible for one another. And at the deepest level, and this is what I'll close with, and this may sound like weird, if the stuff hasn't sounded weird yet, but there's a process where the human brain goes on a pathway of categorizing reality, meaning it makes assumptions how things are divided. Does that yellow thing mean 5 minutes? Yes, excellent. Good timing. So it categorizes what it presumes are the divisions in the world. It then makes concepts based on the categories it believes exist in the world. These are mental constructs. Concept, for example. And then it makes symbols to try to articulate those concepts. Everybody with that? Categories, concepts, symbols. They're all mental constructions. Here's one we're going to close our gathering with me right now. It's a 4-letter word. And you may not even think that this word could have potential negative impacts, but it may, and it's the word S-E-L-F, self. We take that word and we say, Sylvie has a self that only is in her body, or even worse, only in her head. And we say things like her mind is just in her brain, or just in her body, or something, and her self comes from this body. And if I asked you, where's your self? You'd point to your body. That's very common in this culture. In this culture. But, for example, at a meeting that I'm holding in April, which you're all welcome to come and join us, I'm starting with indigenous cultures and how they view the self as fundamentally relational, not just with other people, but with nature. We've lost that. And in contemporary culture, what we do is we say the self is a solo entity that lives in your body. And then we're having deep discussions about racism. And this is 2019. This is the 400th anniversary of the first slave ship arriving here in the United States when Europeans kidnapped people from Africa. And we have not paid reparations for that atrocity, nor have we paid reparations, by the way, for the largest genocide in the history of humanity, which was the Native American people, the indigenous people of this continent. So we live in a culture full of these traumas, hundreds and hundreds of years in the making, which have never been resolved. So this issue then that the mind and the self are just in your body is actually an understandable concept you get from living in a culture of separation, of isolation, of not belonging. So you can say, well, what in the world are we going to do about that? Well, there's a simple thing you can do, very simple. And a lot of the parenting books I write, we end with this plea to modern parents who may be reading these parenting books. And that is, your child, yes, has a differentiated inner experience of a me, but who Sylvie is and who Milo is are also a we. So you say, well, how can you integrate me plus we? Well, integration means you honor differences and promote linkages, so you don't lose the differentiated elements. So me plus we, to be integrated, would be mwe, M-W-E. And you would be amazed at how kids get this like this, that they are relieved to know that they're not just an isolated me, that mwe, like in schools where I teach this, for example, the Blue School in New York, when the kids realize who they are as a mwe, and they write off on their text to each other, "we wants to get together, at 2 p.m. or whatever like that." There's this feeling of fullness to it because the symbol of me and the concept of an isolated self that comes only from your body and the category of there's self in the body and there's everyone else, you know what it does? It does this thing called othering. And that is the scourge of humanity. But it may not be that hard once we name it to reverse it. So the path forward that parents like the mom of Sylvie and the mom of Milo and all of us can do, even if we didn't give birth ourselves to children, we're all in community. We can create a community of we, and together we can turn the path of our relationship with one another and with nature in a totally different direction. So thank you very much for your attention.
For a minute. I think we can say, we love you. Now, listen, this is like a setup. Anna and I are going like this together. Okay, so we just launched a second exhibition that will be up for 5 years, and it's called Esther and the Dream of One Loving Human Family. And it takes extraordinary, created without one tinge of bitterness, 36 embroideries done for the family of a woman, a Polish woman from the countryside who survived the Holocaust. And it juxtaposed it with works and embroideries from Rwanda, from Native American. I mean, we were going like, oh my God, what a, but above what your main expertise, parent-child attachment, and Milo and Sylvie's welcome presence here today. When I chose parenting as the theme, little did I know that on a daily basis that we would be seeing the separation of parent and children daily in the newspaper as the headline. So we have the work in this exhibition that I hope you all take time with from Dr. Alicia Lieberman, because she so clearly echoes what you're saying, that, and even our sponsor PNC, from 0 to 5, that trust relationship that is everything, like the little sponges that we're all born with as many neurons as there are stars in the Milky Way. Estimated, like we're so full when we're, our brains, when we're here, we're soaking in everything. And if that is disrupted, the greatest stress that a child can have is being separated from its primary caretaker. And, I see these children, I can't even imagine someone coming in and deciding they can't be together and indefinitely separating them, and then deciding that we have to protect the children from unwanted touching, so we'll make the policy nobody should hug these infants even. So the damage that has been done, it's not just like bad to separate children, but the fact that your work and so many of the people here today are underscoring that you are setting up innocent children for irreparable harm that will never be healed in this lifetime. It's very overwhelming. So,
Yeah.
so thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. You're welcome. And I'll say regarding just what you were saying, 30 of my attachment research colleagues and myself published a paper that you can get through our website exactly talking about the separation of the kids at the border with exactly all the research backing everything you just said, Rebecca. So
Give the website, please, to everyone.
it's drdansiegel.com, and then I think it's under resources, and it's the attachment statement from 30 of us that was published, yeah.
So thank you so much.